fellow Blue Jackets fans, and welcome to Boom and Gloom. This, of course, is a Columbus Blue Jackets podcast where I discuss the boom and gloom, the good and the bad, of CBJ hockey. My name is Anthony, and I call myself North America's longest-suffering hockey fan. Every other episode or so, I explain why I feel I can call myself that, so I'm going to skip that today. But if you're new to the podcast and you want to know why I firmly believe this, just go back and listen to the beginning of my last episode. Returning listeners, thank you so much. Appreciate your support. Thank you for tuning in today. It is summer. It is very hot. I'm recording this on June 11th, and we're experiencing record or near record highs in temperature. And things are moving pretty quickly. The Stanley Cup Final is going on, and series is tied right now. And there has been some Blue Jackets news. So let's dive into it. The big news, of course, is that Zach Werenski is your 2026 Norris Trophy winner, awarded to the league's top defenseman. This is a huge deal. The Blue Jackets have a Norris Trophy winner for the first time in their history. So from a franchise, a historical perspective, this is massive. But it brings with it some other implications. Zach is 28, about to be 29 years old. He is now a Norris Trophy winner. He is an Olympic gold medal winner, assisting on the golden goal, no less. He's a silver medalist from the Four Nations face-off. He's won a Calder Cup trophy. And I mean, for being on an AHL championship team. And he's also led the Blue Jackets in scoring 2 years in a row now. And that's what makes this such a huge deal. Werenski has pretty much done it all now, except for one thing, and that is playoff success. In fact, he hasn't been to the playoffs in 6 years now. He has felt what winning tastes like. So now, I doubt he is going to want to stay with a franchise that continues to fall short. It is a huge deal because Zach Werenski is going to want to keep winning. He wants to compete for a Stanley Cup. Now, he's never come right out and say this, but some of his comments seem to almost be directed at Blue Jackets management, saying without actually saying, hey, it's time to do something significant and make the Jackets a contending team. He also didn't say this, but I believe that he is gone in 2 seasons if the Blue Jackets don't make the playoffs these next 2 seasons. And to be honest with you, I do not or would not blame him one bit. All the accolades he has received, and I'm sure he wants to compete, like truly compete for a Stanley Cup. I think the Jackets have to make the playoffs next season, and the following season they have to make a legit run, winning 2 rounds, maybe at least. I think just making it to the playoffs and losing in the first round is not going to convince Zach to stick around longer. So this team has to start winning consistently, has to start making the playoffs and doing well these next 2 years. Otherwise, Zach is going to want to look elsewhere. Just my opinion, of course. I could be wrong. But if I were in Zach's shoes, I would feel pretty similar. I've done it all except have NHL playoff success. So if I'm not going to have that success in Columbus, then I'm going to find it. I'm going to go seek it somewhere else. And now you have his buddy, Dylan Larkin, requesting a trade from Detroit. Upon hearing this, there were lots of fans clamoring for Don Waddell to swing a trade, to make a deal to bring Larkin to Columbus. The idea is that Dylan would love to play with Zach Werenski, and Zach Werenski would love to play with him. And it would be, it would create this wonderful BFF situation. Plus, Larkin is a bona fide top 6 forward. So it makes total sense to try to bring him to Columbus, right? No. No, it wouldn't. Let me explain. Looking at it with a broad view, yes, Dylan Larkin would be a great fit for the Jackets. Anytime you can add a top 6 forward to your lineup, that's a good thing. Plus, a good friend of Werenski's, which would ultimately make our best defender and best player happy. Of course. But here's the deal. Larkin is 30 years old, or will be when the season starts. And the Jackets need to get younger, not older. We don't need to add another 30-something to this lineup. But the main thing is, what would it cost the Jackets to trade for Larkin? Again, he's a top 6 forward, maybe even a top 3, maybe. So I saw an article that suggested it would take Kent Johnson and Dmitry Voronkov and the 14th overall pick in this year's draft. Is that worth a player on the wrong side of 30? Is that worth giving up on a 23-year-old Kent Johnson, a 25-year-old Dmitry Voronkov, and a mid-first round pick? My opinion is absolutely not. Not worth the assets. I definitely 100% agree the Jackets need a top 6 difference maker. But they need to acquire one who is younger and will not cost a king's ransom. Will not sacrifice so many of the team's potential future stars, gutting the team's prospects all at once. As I said many times before, I'm not ready to give up on Kent Johnson. And I don't think management is either. I could be wrong on that. But I would not trade him unless the return blows me away. Unless it almost guarantees it is going to make our team significantly better. So to me, I say that's not going to happen. Now, this seems to be a moot point here because Larkin has apparently indicated that he wants to go to Minnesota, Florida, or, shocker here, Vegas. And I guess yesterday my brother was telling me that it came out that he added 3 more teams to that list. Islanders maybe, Tampa Bay, and one other team. I think that's, I haven't looked it up yet. That's just what my brother has told me. But anyway, because of his request and what the Jackets would apparently have to give up to acquire him, I would say that the chances of him playing for Columbus next season are virtually zero, slim to none. And in my opinion, that is a good thing. Okay? I don't blame Larkin at all for wanting out. He has played the last decade for Detroit and it has not seen the playoffs in that time. 10 years, I believe it is, that he has not been to the playoffs. That is a long time to wait. And a lot of his career given up for a team that is not winning. I can completely understand him wanting to go someplace else where he has a chance to win. That is why I said earlier that if the Jackets don't make the playoffs the next 2 seasons, they might find themselves receiving a similar request from Zach Werenski. It has been 6 years for him without making the playoffs. However, in a recent post by, I think it's pronounced LeBrun, so Pierre LeBrun, he speculated, baselessly speculated, that Zach might request a trade sooner than later. Now, the dude has no proof, no source, just baseless speculation to get clicks on his article. For what it's worth, I think Zach really likes Columbus and would rather win in Columbus. I think he'll play out his contract before he requests a trade. But, again, that's just me speculating. And like I said, the Jackets have to start winning. Like yesterday. This season and next, they need to make the playoffs and make a little noise. No playoffs or first round exit, that may spell the beginning of the end of Zach Werenski in Columbus. But let me touch on something here a bit more controversial. And I've actually mentioned this in a recent episode. What if the Jackets did trade Zach Werenski? Before I go any further, let me just state that I don't want the team to trade him. Okay, I'm not suggesting they should trade him. All right, I'm just throwing a what if out there. I'm saying I don't think it would be as bad as it might appear on the surface. Think about the absolute haul it would bring back to the team, like in return. I mean, a Norris Trophy winning defenseman in the prime of his career. There are no doubt teams who are drooling over Zach Werenski at this point. And the Jackets need a star forward. So maybe giving up a star defenseman is the way to do it. And again, I am not advocating for a trade, all right? I'm simply presenting another side that some people may not see. I personally don't think it would be as detrimental as one would assume. A trade involving Zach would potentially bring back a star forward or at least a player about to become one, plus additional picks and prospects. And what makes me think that might actually be a good thing for the Jackets, if you remember, the team played fine without Zach this season when he was out injured or sick. I mean, I'm not denying that, sure, he would be missed. He would be missed on defense. But now you would have more scoring to offset that. And more picks and prospects to make your team better in the future. And you have Denton Matejchuk. The dude continues to progress well. and impress, if you don't mind me saying, in his very short time in the NHL so far. He's looking to me like a future number one defenseman. So trading Werenski would certainly accelerate that plan, for sure, and for better or worse. But my point is, if the Jackets did trade Werenski in the near future, I don't think it would be the end of the world. In fact, it might even work out to be a good thing. So one last time, though, I will say this so I don't have anyone attacking me over this. I do not want the Jackets to trade Werenski, nor do I expect them to. It is not something that I am pushing for or hoping for. I'm simply playing devil's advocate here, discussing a perspective that might not be discussed much. All right, moving on. Mike Babcock. I gotta admit something here. I never thought I would ever speak his name on a Columbus Blue Jackets podcast again. At least because he was involved in Blue Jackets news. But here we are with some interesting situations that have popped up with the Jackets involved, albeit indirectly. The Edmonton Oilers apparently, for some reason, want to hire Mike Babcock as their next head coach. I'm going to be honest with you here and tell you, I just don't get it. Why would the Oilers, or any team for that matter, want this guy to be part of their organization? Especially after the scandal, or whatever you want to call it, that forced him to resign after 2 months as Blue Jackets coach in the offseason? Especially after all the stories about his past relationships with players. Why would you want to hire this guy? It has been literally 20 years, I think, since he's won a Stanley Cup. I think it's been 20 years. There are better options out there. Options that don't involve privacy-breaching, narcissistic jerks. Yet, the Oilers apparently want him so badly that they're having the NHLPA conduct a mandatory investigation just so they can hire him. The Blue Jackets players who were part of the team 3 summers ago will surely be interviewed now. And here's the kicker, okay? This is what makes the story so interesting to me. It has been revealed that it wasn't PhoneGate, as they apparently have nicknamed it. It wasn't the issue we all heard about involving Babcock asking to see personal information and photos on players' phones. No, apparently that's not what forced him to resign. There's something else. Therefore, I assume something worse. This guy did something worse than that. Worse than demanding to see personal content on players' phones. And the Oilers still want him? That's crazy. What the heck? That is absolutely nuts. And I, for one, I'm just so intrigued now to see what is revealed regarding what exactly Babcock did to warrant the resignation from Columbus. His hiring will go down as one of the biggest mistakes in franchise history. Maybe the biggest, I don't know. But whatever is revealed, and hopefully it will actually all be revealed, like what he did, will just it'll just make make his hiring that much worse. All right, moving on here. Well, there have been no signings or trades since my last episode, but I do have some thoughts regarding the Jackets' current UFA situations. Starting with Mason Marchment. A month ago, I thought the Jackets would get it done regarding a contract with Marchment. In fact, when the season ended, I actually felt like he was a more important piece to sign than Charlie Coyle. Now that some time has passed, I would still really, really like to see Marchment return, but I'm not as insistent. I really like Marchment's game, and I think the team needs someone big and nasty like him. But the more time goes on, the more it looks like he's going to test the free agent market. And if he tests the free agent market, I predict that he will either find a team willing to pay a higher price than the Jackets are willing, or he's going to find a team whom the Jackets would match or offer something close to what they're offering, but that team is going to sway him because he will have a better chance of winning with them. So once again, if I'm right here, the Blue Jackets' history of sucking and years of mediocrity is going to cost them another good player. Now, Mason is older. He's going to be 31, I believe, this season. And I know I've been going on and on about how the Jackets need to get younger as well as better. But my hope was the Jackets would sign one 30-year-old, Mason Marchment, and trade another or two. And I mean Connor Garland and possibly Sean Monahan. But that's... I took a deep dive into that last episode, so I'm not going to go into that further here. But if I'm putting my GM hat on, that would be my plan. I would sign Marchment, trade Garland, and then explore the possibility. Talk to Sean Monahan, see how he feels. Would he accept a trade? He has a no movement clause, so would he waive that for any particular team? But again, the more time goes on, the more likely it seems that Mason Marchment is going to walk. I still have hope, though, that they'll get something done before free agency opens. But I think history kind of shows that there's some truth to this, that if he gets to free agency, he's as good as gone. Now, could a Provorov situation happen where he tests the market and then ultimately signs with the Jackets? Sure, that could happen. I just don't see it. The free agent market is so thin this summer that I feel Marchment is going to be a hot commodity. And it really kind of irritates me considering the Jackets gave up so much to get him. I mean, come on. Ultimately, the Chinakhov deal was made because of the acquisition of Marchment. Now, the Jackets now, if I'm correct, I'll say it this way: if I'm correct, the Jackets won't have Chinakhov. They won't have the draft picks they gave up for Marchment, and they won't have Marchment. So it's times like this where I think to myself, I hope Waddell knows what he is doing. I imagine NHL general managers have long-term plans with plans for different scenarios. Kind of like how in sci-fi movies there are different timelines, like alternate timelines. So surely Waddell thought, okay, I'm going to trade for Marchment, and if we don't make the playoffs, or even if we do, I may lose him for nothing. I need a plan to compensate for that should it happen. I mean, surely general managers think that way, right? Surely he thought there was at least a 50-50 chance he was going to lose a player that a lot of other teams would want as an unrestricted free agent. Therefore, he must have a plan. At least some potential trade targets or free agents that might help make up for his loss. And one last thing about all this. Last season, there were a lot of fans, I think, who were upset with the return for Chinakhov. But the counter argument was that they weren't really trading him for draft picks and Danton Heinen. They were trading him for Marchment. That's what if you look back at those two trades, what it really amounted to was Chinakhov for Marchment. And that made it okay with some fans. I'll admit, that was one way I looked at it. But now, if and when Marchment walks, it will be like the Jackets traded Chinakhov and draft picks for a couple of months of Mason Marchment. That's it. And that doesn't look too good. Now, if Caden Lindstrom, big, strong, supposedly aggressive player, was ready to step into the lineup, I might feel differently. But right now, the Jackets have no one in their prospect pool with the size, nastiness, and scoring ability of Mason Marchment. So my point is, if I'm correct and Marchment does move on, I think it's going to be a tough pill to swallow. Now, as for the other UFAs, there's no word on either Goodbranson or Jenner, or Heinen for that matter, the other Jackets unrestricted free agents. Same theory here, though. The longer there is no news, the more likely it becomes that these players are not going to be Jackets next season. I'm not going to go into it again because I've talked about it extensively the last couple of episodes, but I personally think all three of these players need to move on. It is time. If the Jackets truly want a culture change, that starts with new players and a new captain. Now, there has been some other news involving Jackets players. Igor Zamula, he apparently was going to sign with a new KHL team. Like, his rights were traded. So I guess he's not signed yet, but that's what it's looking like. So it's looking more and more that he's not going to return to the Jackets. And if he does, he'll probably be like the 8th defenseman. If they do even decide to extend an offer to him, because I believe he's an RFA. And then I can never pronounce this guy's name correctly, so please forgive me if I butcher this, but Stanislav Svozil, I don't know. He was a 3rd round pick of the Jackets in 2021, and he has signed to go back to his home country. I think it's Czech Republic or Czechia or something like that. He only played two games for the Jackets. Both were in the 22-23 season, and it's just a shame that it didn't work out, because at a time, there was a time where he was considered a top prospect on defense for the Jackets. And then I guess one other guy to talk about, Sergei Ivanov. There's talk that he might be coming over. He might come over next season, in which case he would probably play in Cleveland for the year. and yeah, he'll be back. He'll be over in North America, so we'll see what happens with that. Now, something else that there has been no news about: how the Blue Jackets games will be televised next season. Now, we all know the story. FanDuel Sports will be no more. The second the season ended, I canceled my subscription to them. They're done. The Jackets will need to find another way to air their games. And I'm a little worried about this, and here's why. I live in Troy, Ohio. That's about 25 minutes north of Dayton and about an hour and 20 minutes from Columbus. So if the Jackets choose to let a local station run the show and televise their games, I fear that I will not be able to tune in. I don't subscribe to a cable service or a TV service of any kind. I watched all the games using the FanDuel app. So therefore, I hope the Jackets do what some other teams have already done. And that is create their own network. Like have their own app. Fans can watch the games using their own app. I'm all for that. I am more than willing to pay for that like I did for FanDuel. I would hate to resort to illegal means to watch games, which are often unreliable, if I'm being honest. There's tons of ads, viruses, buffering. It just never seems to be a good feed. Whenever the games were on ESPN last season, that was my only way to watch. But at this point, I haven't heard a thing about it. By the way, I will not subscribe to any cable TV service unless the Jackets advance in the playoffs. Because if they get past, I think the second round, maybe the first, I can't remember, where the regional sports networks usually stop televising the games and it moves to the national TV stage. Well, I'm not going to resort to illegal streams for that. I will pay for a month or two of Spectrum. And I almost said Time Warner Cable there. How's that for a blast from the past? So anyway, when the Jackets have playoff games televised on national TV, fingers crossed that will actually happen soon, that's when I will start throwing a bit of money at Spectrum or Hulu or ESPN Plus or whatever it's called, whatever will get me the games, and only then. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to some info on that. I just have not heard any updates. I'm going to leave you with a question today. Something I've been thinking about, something I've actually spoken about before on this podcast. I am probably in the minority here, but something I have hated, and I know that's a strong word, but I'm still going to use it. Something I have hated at Jackets games is when the announcer said, "Jackets on the power play." I always found that quite lame, especially because the Blue Jackets have always pretty much sucked on the power play. So saying that, saying Jackets on the power play, that to me translated into something like, watch out, the Jackets have a big advantage now. And they really never did. They never have. It just never fit, in my opinion. Now, with Greg Murray, the arena announcer, retiring, it makes me wonder, is the new announcer going to continue with that tradition of saying that same phrase prior to every power play? Or will there be a new phrase? Change of culture coming, right? So might as well make some other changes as well, right? Maybe some in-arena changes. Some in-game changes. So that's my question. Will the power play announcement change? I personally would love it to change. Not only because I hate it, but I could see some kind of announcement more conducive to audience participation. Like the announcer says, Jackets on and the crowd yells power play. I don't know. Something like that. That was just the first thing that came to mind. So just something to think about. All right. Going to wrap this up. I hope everyone is enjoying the summer so far. Aaron Portzline has predicted a wild summer of hockey trades. He said that on numerous occasions. So I hope he's right and that there's some exciting news and the Jackets are involved in some way. The next time you hear my voice will probably be in July. And by that time, free agency will have started. And we may have a lot of news to talk about, especially if Porty is correct. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to me if you have questions, thoughts, or suggestions for future topics. Or if you just want to chat about the Jackets. I'm always up to talk Jackets, to kind of pass the time in the off season. You can find me on social media, Blue Sky, Instagram. My handle is WhalerJacket. Or you can always email me, whalerjacket@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Boom and Gloom. Until next time, take care, and fingers crossed for a summer of excitement and improvement for our Blue Jackets. Go Jackets!